Chatting GPT. All night, we're losing control. No chatting GPT. Chatting GPT.
Hello and welcome back to Chatting GPT, the podcast where we explore how AI is transforming the way we work, lead and live. I'm Maryrose Lyons, the founder of the AI Institute and your host, and my guest today is Lewis Enright. She's a change management professional with over 20 years of experience working with some global organisations you might know like Johnson & Johnson, Weir and Wipro. She has a master's in industrial and organisational psychology. She's currently studying AI strategy and leadership at MIT. And what she really does is she helps leaders who are tasked with turning AI strategy into meaningful change. Karen's vibe is that she always puts people at the centre of digital transformation, and this really comes across in this episode where we explore why trust, communication and leadership are every bit as important as the technology itself when it comes to successful AI adoption. So Karen, it's a real pleasure having you on Chatting GPT, and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for the warm welcome.
You are so welcome. So can I just start off by saying, and I've taught this so many times, I often feel very sorry for leaders because, you've probably seen this so many times. There's a lot of leaders and C-suite people, I'm thinking in particular, who might well be experts in their field, but they're not always experts at AI. And yet they're being asked to lead at a time when evolution in AI is moving so fast. It's permeating every part of the business so deeply. So I suppose I wanted to ask, tell me about some of the feelings that some of the very, strongest leaders have when you come in to work with them.
I think everybody feels underprepared and a little bit uncertain at this time. I mean, none of us knows exactly what the future holds. None of us can properly articulate what a future state world looks like when AI is fully implemented. So I think the people that I'm in conversation with are probably feeling pretty uncertain themselves. And the big question is really around how do you lead when you yourself are uncertain? And how do you lead others that are equally uncertain and probably full of fear? So that to me would be a big theme that I would anticipate that leaders are all struggling with at this point.
So how do you lead when you're uncertain?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to being able to look at what the next immediate step is. So I'm going to give you a story that I think might be helpful here, Maryrose. So
great.
Imagine that you're holding a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and it's quite hot and it slips out of your hand, right? What's the first thing you do, right? You immediately try and grab that cup of coffee and all of your attention goes to that. You're trying not to burn your hand. You're trying to make sure the cup doesn't spill all over your computer. You're trying to make sure the cup doesn't break. And that's exactly what happens when we're in this state of uncertainty. Our brain focuses all the attention on that. And I think that's exactly what leaders are dealing with. Their employees and the people around them are so focused on what is fearful, what is creating fear in them, what is uncertain, that they kind of attention is all drawn there. And we need to bring it back a little bit and go, well, we can't tell you the full picture of everything that's happening, but what we can tell you is the next immediate step. So I think that's one way that we can kind of help deal with uncertainty. There's lots of others. If you want me to carry on, I can.
That's really good. Yeah, please do. That's a really good allegory. Yeah.
I think another way is people feeling included. And this is kind of a principle of change management from all my years of experience. It doesn't matter what kind of project you're trying to implement, right? Is if people feel included and they feel like they have a voice, and you actually have those diverse voices in the room and really listen to what people are saying, you're far more likely to get to a good outcome and people actually buy into the change and feel like they are actually part of creating the solution. So that's really key when you're leading in times of uncertainty. And also then you get to hear things that you maybe didn't think of because you're certainly not the expert. You might be in a completely different field. You might be in HR or you might be in IT, but focused on a particular area of IT. You don't know about AI. And then you listen to people around the organization who have some interesting things to say.
It's a really good point, Karen, because it's one of the reasons why when we're helping people to come up with the kind of cohorts for, say, doing training engagements with us, especially that all-important pilot cohort, it's a natural thing that people go, oh, we're going to put like one director in from every department. And we're like, no, because that's just like the director's voices. I'm always pushing for having like one whole entire team. And that team might be made up of some of the people who are really into AI. And then there's some of the people who are fearful of AI and some of the people who are like arms folded going, tell me about this AI thing. You're not going to change my mind. And we kind of specialize in changing their minds. So I think, yeah, the people being included and people being heard, I think is really, really important. I think you're right.
I think you're touching on such an important thing there, and that's a key change management principle is like, let's get the diverse voices in the room and let's bring a range of people who are fully resistant to AI all the way through to the people who are making their own agents and starting their own autonomous businesses. Get all of it in the room, because then we really hear what's going on.
Exactly. I tell you, from when I was doing the training back in the early days myself, one of the things I loved the most was when you'd be doing it with a group of people and you'd have a few of the kind of, not fully bought in people, let's say. And then you have this moment when you've shown them something, and then you've shown them something that's completely relevant to their role, because that's obviously how we create our material. And then you just see this moment where the light switches on and they think, they see what you've done. They probably have done it themselves in session, and then they're immediately thinking of, oh my God, I can do this every week across 5 similar tasks, and that's when the magic happens. It's actually such a great feeling, actually.
Yeah. I was actually, I visited my hairdresser last week, and I was having a chat with her, and she was telling me she had bought a car that can do self-parking, which is obviously the new things with cars, right?
Yeah.
So I was having a chat with her and saying, well, have you actually tried this self-parking thing? How does it work for you? She said, well, I'm a terrible driver. I still haven't tried the self-parking car at all. My boyfriend jumps in the seat and does the parking for me. And I was thinking, this is exactly the situation we face with organizations going through changes like this. Nobody's actually shown them how to do it, right? Once she's seen that done and somebody's demonstrated it and she's not had to worry about the risk of crashing the car and the insurance payouts, she'll get her confidence and she'll be able to use that every single time. And yes, it'll really help her life. And it's exactly the same story in organizations. That's what you guys do in the AI Institute, right?
Well, it's true, actually, but it's funny. 2 things come to my mind there is like the car parking thing is like, there's a lot of people a lot of organizations who go out and buy very expensive SaaS software. I'm thinking certain CRMs where you're paying for that car and lots of other things beside, and then you don't even use it, That's so true. So tell me though, when you're engaging with the leaders and you're coming in and, they're kind of saying to you, okay, we need to do this AI thing. And you're saying, okay, everybody needs to be heard. We need to hear all of the voices. How do you go about that? Like, how do you build trust with both your client, the leader, and then obviously the kind of service users or the people whose lives you're trying to benefit positively?
I think it's a really interesting question, that piece about building trust, right? And I think the trust is around multiple things. It's trust of what you're going to do to add value. Like, how are you actually impacting your clients in the end? And what is the thing that you're building that's going to be for them? It's trust that the data and the processes that you're following are actually robust and that there's some sort of governance around it. I think from the people side, it's trust that you're not going to just use me for my knowledge and then chuck me out. And I think go on, ask it.
Did you hear? No, just speaking to that point, during one of the weeks in the end of May, Atlassian is like a very, very large tech company, and we actually use one of their products, Trello, which is great. The guy who designed, so the thing I read about was how they're making something like $1.6 billion in profit every quarter. Wow. And the guy who designed, I'm just trying to find it here now, so I have the actual facts. The guy who designed all of their systems, they let him go. So he was this engineer who'd been working with them for 8 years. He built all of their systems and they just fired him. Like, what a stupid move. So what he did, and I really admire him for this, he posted a 38-minute breakdown of every system he had built and he posted it for free online.
Wow.
Well, what a stupid move.
I know. And that's, I think, where we go wrong, right? Is you sort of, the question that was underneath your question was like, how do we actually help people trust that what we're doing is right?
Yes.
And I think one of the key things organizations need to grapple with upfront is, what are you going to actually do to people in terms of their jobs?
Yes.
So are you going to upfront just be transparent with people and say, this is an efficiency play and we are going to lose some jobs along the way here? In which case, just say it, because people can see through you if you don't say it.
What percentage of your clients actually say it?
I don't think I want to go into those sort of details or try and calculate it on the fly,
Okay.
but I'm thinking about all the big transformations I've done over the years, Maryrose, where we've done kind of big. I'm going to give an example of something else that's kind of unrelated. So there was a client I worked with that did a massive reorganization in finance, and it was going to kind of result in massive headcount reduction over the years. And they ended up in this kind of large tussle with HR about what you could say and what you couldn't say, given all the kind of laws across different markets. And in the end, I think that leader won the battle to really be transparent up front and just be plain about, look, this is what the transformation looks like. Yes, it will reduce our headcount. Yes, we are going to offshore some roles. And it was very painful. People did obviously take it quite badly at the time. But I think what that does is it builds trust over time, where people know what direction you're going in. And yes, they might have to deal with that kind of loss and suffering and knowing that maybe this isn't permanent, but at least you've played it transparently with them. I think if we don't do that in organizations, we really end up going down a very bad path of making people feel very used, and not, not kind of being clear about what the end point is. Even better is if you don't have to do that job loss play right at the get-go.
Yes.
And you can maybe go a different route and say, well, we're going to experiment. We're going to try this out. We're going to see what we learn. Whoever's part of this, you're going to get redeployed and upskilled, and maybe you'll get to do something even more exciting. If I had my wish, that's what I would suggest to everybody that I work with. Go that route rather than the route of job loss.
Job loss. I totally agree. Well, actually, I was thinking about, we had a senior leader on here before, and he was talking about how with the kind of the rollout of all of the AI literacy training they've done in their organisation, you can already see those who have adapted it and those who have not. And I was kind of saying like, right, okay, so, how do you see it? And he said, well, they're all the ones who got promotions and they got bigger bonuses. So, that's the opposite end of the kind of thing. Instead of like people tend to focus on the negative thing. But it is also, if you have curious minds who really go deep and learn how to do these things, they're going to be producing more work, better quality. So they should be rewarded.
Completely agree. And that's exactly where you want to go to. You want people to feel excited and not be sitting on that fear bucket all the time, just going, what's going to happen next? I think we know this, like when you're in that fear mode, you shut down, you're overprotective of yourself, and you're not going to be doing your best work. You're going to be coming into the workplace afraid, and that's never a good thing.
No, not at all. But here's the thing though, I was speaking on a panel recently, and we were all asked to give like kind of what's one word of advice you'd give to everyone in the audience. And my word of advice was, if you have people in your company that are, those kind of AI champions, they're called, the kind of, they're curiously adopting, they're experimenting, they're spending their own weekends learning how to, do things on Claude, for example. I find so many times companies are naturally trying to shut that down. It's like, well, you're not allowed to do that. And my word of advice was celebrate those people, make them really visible. Yeah. What would be your advice on that kind of thing? Because you're obviously a specialist in this area and I'm not.
So I think two things here. I think there's the difference between personal experimentation and then organizational experimentation. I think personal experimentation, people must go wild. They need to try it in every way that they wish, build whatever apps they wish, build autonomous agents at home, try the workflows, do what they want. I think when you're inside an organization, it is different. And obviously you're playing with customers' data, employees' data, sensitive information, and you could affect workflows that could get impacted and damage your reputation in some way. Depending on how big the play is, obviously the governance needs to be stricter. So I think what I would say is it just depends on the context. Those folks, though, that are playing and that are experimenting, you want to bring them in. So if you have got something interesting that you want to do in your organization, those are the folks that you need to embrace and have kind of working alongside you. So quite good to know what else they're doing outside of work, right? To experiment with the technologies.
Yeah, no, I agree actually. So in terms of what makes people genuinely engage, so you have your kind of we've talked about like say the people who are like very fearful, they're on one extreme, and then you have the people who are like the real early adopters. What about like just your general maximum, most of the population? What can someone, when you're coming in to bring in change, and I don't mean just in AI, but when you're trying to bring in a changed approach to something, what are some of the methods and practices that you use to bring the kind of the vast majority along?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've used really effectively across organizations is the setup of change agent networks, which is a very standard change management tool and practice that we tend to use. And there you would have folks that were kind of champions of a particular department, and you'd have them much more engaged in your project, shaping the conversation. You're having an influence, getting an opportunity to test the technology if you're implementing a technology solution, or comment on the operating model if you're changing roles and responsibilities, or get significantly involved in how you're planning an acquisition. And those folks can really influence their peers because they're seen to be trusted partners. They're seen to learn something. People look up to them, and then they can also represent the views of the general population to try and make sure that people feel engaged and actually are part of the conversation. I think it's absolutely critical. I think another thing is just, you kind of alluded to this, and I think it's really important, just having those diverse voices. So both skeptics and people who are fully onboarded, like both sets of people, but then also people from very different backgrounds. That can be really important to get the engagement going. Because again, then you can see interesting things that, somebody else is doing, or some other way that they're using the tool that you maybe haven't thought of. And getting those folks together in a room can be incredibly powerful.
That's why I love that whole idea of, sorry to cut across, but that whole idea of reverse mentoring. A lot of times I speak to so many business leaders, and they're like, they just assume that young people coming out of college are expert in AI. And it's like, no, they're not. Like, they've kind of learned how to do their essays on it, but they don't understand the workflows and how to bring AI into that. And then you have the older people who've been in the company for ages, and they know the workflows. And I love that kind of bringing them together.
Yeah, there's definitely a generational play here, right? And I mean, one of the things that's constantly in the media is about how young people now don't have work, and how they're going to be displaced because some of the junior jobs are no longer available in organizations. And I think we've got to think about, as a society, how we're going to engage young people and get them involved in this conversation and get them more excited about AI. Because I'm sort of seeing in my own young people a little bit of skepticism and worry about what it can do. And largely that's because we've just displaced them and not given them a voice in these spaces.
There's a lot of talk at the moment, with all the kind of at the commencement speeches in the US universities, the booing and stuff that's going on. Yeah. One of the things that I thought was really good idea was, who was I talking to recently? It was probably somebody on the podcast. And we were talking about these ideas where, the graduate comes in and their job is to kind of be like this kind of note taker in meetings, and to sit there and be seen and not heard, and this kind of thing. Yeah. And we were talking about, well, like in an era of AI note takers, you can have your AI note taker taking the meeting minutes, but then still allow that graduate to be in the room and allow them to be working away using AI. And maybe their contribution is, at the end of the meeting, they show something they've knocked up on Claude during the meeting, or some sort of deep research they've used on Copilot, like on some of the topics that have been discussed. That's where I see a value in, shifting the type of traditional role of the graduate and into something that's actually more contributing to the bottom line.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm thinking just about my own use, right? And I'm thinking about how much my own work has shifted. So a lot of the time in change management in the past, we had spent ages and ages doing analytics work. So analyzing surveys or doing sentiment chats from focus groups and trying to pull themes together. And that work's just disappeared. What it means is that you have to spend a lot more time grappling with what are the themes that are coming out, and then what can we do about that? Now, graduates and young people are smart people. Why can't they also ask those questions and answer them? They have different ideas that some of us that maybe have context or age or experience might not think of. So I think we should encourage people to sort of step out of, you're not just there for analytics or note taking, contribute to the conversation. What do we do with this interesting information? And equally, they can get on Claude or an AI and ask it to do a thought partnership exercise with them and learn from that too.
Yeah, they have that interesting perspective, We had another guy on, I remember, who said this. We had a guy on the podcast called Sean Blanchfield, and he was kind of saying, this whole thing about graduate jobs, he was saying, this is their revolution. And if I was coming out of college now, I'd be getting right into the middle of it, So absolutely. I think... Yeah, so I think that suits some individuals. I think the whole kind of like anyone can set up a unicorn company is another message. But for me, I kind of feel like, well, that's kind of really speaking to the kind of kids who are being very entrepreneurial. Not everyone is cut out that way, I think. So yeah, I think we need to kind of keep on conversing about this very important topic, and hopefully the kind of the right path and the direction will become apparent. Can we move on to a different topic?
Absolutely.
Great, because I've loads of questions I want to ask you. I love the whole area of change management, and you're the first change management person that we've had on the podcast. So you're representing your entire field.
No pressure.
No pressure, Tell me this. We've talked a little bit about like what happens when you're coming in, and different approaches to bringing change. What if you're kind of working on a project, and you've set out what you're going to do, and it's all going really well, and then you're kind of like mid-project, and you realise that everything's moving a little bit too fast. How does one put the skids on, put the brakes on, and how would you go back? How would you kind of do that, or have you ever had to do that in your experience?
I think sometimes in projects, and I guess with AI it would happen even more, right? I think sometimes with projects people just get overly excited about the technology and just what the technology can do, or they overestimate how fast people can adjust. So I think there's just a space for change management to just reflect back to leaders and say, let's step back for a minute, let's look at everything we have achieved and where we are. And let's actually do a kind of reflection exercise to see where people are at. That's also where our tools like sentiment checks can come in and really help people to go, well, maybe we're not getting exactly the buy-in we hoped for, and maybe people are not experiencing the same way you're experiencing it. Maybe we need to just pause and give people a chance to catch up. So I think there's a number of things change management can do to just help people reflect on where things are actually at in the project. What have we actually achieved, and where do we need to pause and kind of bring people along with where we are?
That's a good answer. So like if you were kind of in a project like that and you knew you needed to pause, is it usually just more time that people need to adapt to change, or is it other factors?
I think it's a mix, right? Sometimes it's just they need time to catch up. Other times it can be, well, you just haven't spent enough time upskilling them, and you haven't, given them the tools to be able to do the change that you're expecting them to do. And sometimes it's because you haven't. Actually, this is quite often the case. It's because you haven't articulated your vision. You haven't told them what it is you're trying to achieve and where we're trying to go. And therefore, what are they holding on to? We're doing something different here, but I have no idea where this is going to end up and how it's going to change my day and what you're expecting of me.
Yes. Yeah. What or why or what the future looks like, and then that again comes back to the fear and uncertainty. It's a crazy world. So I suppose one closing question I'd ask you would be, if we're only really in the early stages of this shift from one way of working, which is pre-AI, let's say, and then AI augmented. What should organisations focus on now so that they're kind of future-proofing for the future?
I think there's a couple of things. I think I would start with some of the basic questions, Maryrose, like why are you deploying this AI? What is it for, and what are you trying to achieve? And then what are you going to do? Let's get into the why, the what, the where, the who, and the how, and just answer those basic questions before you even kick off any projects. Because if we're just deploying technology and there's no purpose to it, people quickly pick that up and kind of sense that we're going in a wrong direction and wonder what the organization is spending its money on. I would think some of the other things that perhaps get underplayed is just the importance of data, the importance of governance, the importance of putting those structures around the program that you're trying to implement, and making sure that actually we've got those things in place before we move forward too fast. I'm currently doing MIT's AI and leadership course at the moment, which has been absolutely fascinating. And I've been quite intrigued with how much they're emphasizing these other elements of an AI implementation: data, governance, change management. If we don't have those capabilities in place and we're just focusing on the technology, we're going to get very lost.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree. It's like, it's got to be about the people. It's got to be like data quality. Yes, the technology comes into play, but you're right. If we don't have all of the elements right, we are going to get very lost. So for someone who is maybe feeling like they might be getting a little bit lost, or they need someone to kind of shine a light on their journey as they begin, how might people get in contact with you, Karen?
They can give me a ring. If you can find my
on an old-fashioned phone?
On an old-fashioned phone, I might answer.
A phone mobile?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. All my socials are live.
Great.
I'm very happy to have a chat with anybody. Really curious to talk to other people across different professions at the moment that are dealing with this, because I've just become so fascinated with the journey that we're on in the world and across organizations. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I would love to chat to people.
So yeah, anyone listening who is also involved in change management, reach out to Karen, and you can form a little lunchtime chats tribe, perhaps.
I think that would be awesome. Honestly, I think change managers are going to be really busy in the next few years. So probably we need to be quite quick about getting our own practice in play and ready to actually respond to the changes that are going to come our way.
That's true. So Karen's going to lead it, okay? So she might have a few extra 5 minutes on her hands. Thanks, Karen. I'm only joking. But thank you very much for coming on to Chatting GPT. You've been great. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
Great. And for anyone listening, we'll have all of Karen's details in the show notes. And for anyone listening who thought this was good, this was a slice of what I really want to listen to when I'm listening to podcasts when I'm out on my walk, we make sure all of our podcast episodes are about 20 minutes long. So they're kind of commute or walk length. If you liked it, give us an old follow. If you're listening to it and you know somebody who needs to hear what Karen had to say, do please forward this on to them. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with another really interesting guest who's not just talking about AI, but who's implementing it. That's me, Maryrose Lyons, Chatting GPT. Thanks for listening.